Today's talk is titled Stuck or Unstuck? Tools for Managing Life's Transitions, to be delivered by Steve Nathanson. Steve and his wife Marcia will soon celebrate 15 years of living in Cambria, dividing their time between the Atlantic coast on Long Island and our beloved Cambria. Their motto is, better bi-coastal than bipolar. Steve is a retired teacher and educational consultant who taught middle, high school, and undergraduate and graduate education at Long Island University. He enjoys writing, playing guitar, performing at open mics, and songwriting. Steve also enjoys tending his beloved succulent garden with over 100 plant specimens. Following the sale of a suburban Long Island home where they lived and raised their family, the Nathansons spent a gap year cruising the world and living in new and exciting places. Greece, Morocco, the Canary Islands, and Malta were among their favorites. The gap year was more than just exciting travel. It fostered a sense of inner confidence and joy. The Nathansons joined the UU shortly after the UUCC moved to its present Arlington Street location. For them, it is a place of perpetual inspiration and created warm relationships. It is a distinct part of why they love Cambria. Steve?
Thank you, Nancy. Good morning, everyone. It's great to see everybody. It's an honor to be here. I'm always humbled to be sitting before you, standing before you. Each of us has a life story. The story of our rise and fall, a story of triumph, a story of heartbreaks, and a story about what you dream about in your future. It's the story you tell strangers when you first meet them. It's the story you tell yourself when you encounter a meaningful place, do a pilgrimage, take a hike. It's the story when you flip through the old family photo albums or when you celebrate an achievement. This morning, I'd like to tell you life stories of two close friends who had similar backgrounds, but widely differing outcomes. I'd like to share how one person triumphed while the other one remained stuck in misery. And most importantly, I would like to explain how we can escape the pitfalls and traps of becoming stuck. So I'll begin with the story of our first friend. We'll call her Norma. She was a vibrant and highly competent educational leader who inspired admiration from the superintendent of schools where we worked, as well as the rank and file teachers in her department. In the 1990s, Norma pioneered cultural exchanges with China when they first were allowing cultural exchange to go forth, and she was active in professional groups promoting this. She's fluent in several languages, and she used to be vivacious with a great sense of humor, yet she could also be tough if necessary. Marcia and I became close friends with her, traveling companions and extended family with Norma. So how is it that the friend that we admire, so competent and intrepid and successful in her career, became lost in her own downward spiral following her retirement? Well, Norma was not lucky in love. Her husband left her for another man. Divorced, Norma now lives with a male companion who has been coping with his own family baggage, including a disabled son. Norma, the formerly charismatic and extroverted person, is now beset with anxiety and depression, as well as potentially serious cardiac problems. She lives in a cluttered, aging, circa 1940s brick home in an upper-class Long Island town, despite her longing to downsize and live near her son. She has had to forego foreign travel, which was her favorite activity. Conversations with her have been reduced to listening to a full-blown pity party of physical and emotional ailments, bitter feelings about her partner, and complaints about last-minute babysitting chores. You see, Norma is clearly stuck. Like living in quicksand, with life sinking down, she cannot move forward. Plans, future dreams, hopes, all withering away as she lives her daily life. The poet Langston Hughes, who I used to teach this poem all the time, once wrote, "Without dreams, life is a broken-winged bird that cannot fly. So hold fast to dreams, for when dreams go, life is a field frozen with snow." So Norma epitomizes this condition of someone who has lost the dream, living without fulfillment, short on hope, and worst of all, an inability to make changes. Now, medical science has linked physical and psychological conditions for stuck individuals. The American Heart Foundation published a warning about a medical condition which was diagnosed in the 1990s called Takotsubo cardiomyopathy. The Takotsubo syndrome is a condition which, quote, triggered by a physical or emotional stress in which the heart muscle suddenly becomes weakened or stunned, and that causes symptoms that mimic heart attacks, unquote. The condition gets its name from a Japanese term, takotsubo, which was a traditional octopus cooking pot. In this condition, the left ventricle of the heart swells and changes shape to become pot-shaped. Takotsubo cardiomyopathy is often called broken heart syndrome, and it's triggered by some of the following things, such as a car accident, an asthma attack, acute illness, the death of a loved one, a marital breakup, frightening medical diagnosis, sudden job loss, severe financial loss, and domestic abuse. Takotsubo cardiomyopathy symptoms will include chest pain or chest tightness, pain in the arm or shoulders, shortness of breath, nausea and or vomiting. Ongoing symptoms can also include tiredness, breathlessness, or chest pains. But these symptoms often mimic the symptoms of a real heart attack, and doctors need to conduct tests, blood tests, and look for chemical markers to separate cardiomyopathy from a real heart attack. Relapse without triggers is statistically very low, but the length of recovery time from broken heart syndrome can be extensive. Takotsubo patients are truly stuck with a need to heal, and the healing must be accompanied by behavioral change. Well, I guess Marcia and I, over the years, were very fortunate and grateful and lit some candles to talk about that we've avoided in some ways becoming stuck. About 4 years ago, we were confronted with an empty nest and some rather strong family drama. Prior to that, we spent a few years coping with the sickness and the eventual death of our parents. At first, self-pity, panic, and depression set into us. And then after the emotional storm began to calm down, we realized that getting unstuck meant that we would have to grapple with a huge chunk of chaos. So we put our home on the market, and that meant we had to massively downsize, eliminating furniture, possessions. And then we came home from Cambria one spring and found an invasion of squirrels in our attic. Although we loved our Cambria home and our life here, we did have several compelling reasons to maintain a base in New York despite these things. But our vanilla suburban life of over 45 years was over. The squirrels made sure of that. We hired an aggressive real estate agent, and she was lucky enough to find a buyer just before the market was beginning to be very soft. It was tough not to have a home, but it was also liberating. So we took a gap year at age 74, which became 2 years, living out of suitcases and Airbnbs and some cruises. That was the good stuff. Traveling or living in different places brought unexpected joy as we discovered we could adapt in ways we never dared to. Suddenly, the little inconveniences of not knowing where the things are located in the house became less daunting. Yeah, we had financial and physical resources as well as resolve to continue our lives in the face of these challenges. And we were lucky, but our life took some more unfortunate turns. One of our experiences was to spend the second year in a cold, drafty home in Long Beach, New York, trying to find a place to permanently live. During that time, we found the apartment of our dreams, but it needed total renovation from the ground up. But we persevered, and we were happy with the results. It was not easy, and we thought we could rest. But could we then rest? No. Then we had a massive flood in Cambria, and we were faced with renting in Cambria during a renovation of our home. In some ways, we were just like Norma, sad, depressed, heartbroken. But unlike Norma, we found the will and persevered to become unstuck, which I'm profoundly grateful. And much of you had something to do with that too. But it's not just seniors and retirees who become stuck. Institutions and government bureaucracies can also become stuck. No doubt many of you have had painful experiences trying to get help from Social Security. Remember them? Or the Department of Motor Vehicles. Way back in the 1970s, I had to wait 6 months to get a file number. That was after passing a teaching license test. Meantime, we were two newlyweds living paycheck to paycheck, and I was doing deliveries. The bureaucracy was inefficient in the school system and out of touch, and I suspect not much has changed over 50 years from now. This is certainly a major factor while schools are failing, but that's another story. Corporations and businesses, like any organization, can get stuck as well. Do you remember Kodak film? Eastman Kodak, the company synonymous with film and photography in our lifetimes, is a classic case of a corporation that gets stuck. It was founded in 1892 by George Eastman, and for much of the 20th century, and I'm sure you're aware of that, was the dominant film and camera manufacturer. It was also a company that was celebrated because it had a benign corporate welfare capitalism policy for its workers. The Kodak brand and the logo were famous all over the world. Even Paul Simon wrote a hit song called Kodachrome about one of their best-selling products. As the 90s and the 2000s ushered in the era of digital photography, Kodak was not able to successfully change their product line or their marketing strategy. Then in January of 2012, a greatly diminished Kodak company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, and it reorganized, concentrating on movie film and digital printing products. Just recently in Asia, the yellow, orange, and gold Kodak logo has become a fashion statement for people going into stores and shopping. It's crazy. Kodak is the paradigm of how a company fails to adapt and how inflexibility in changing times almost can bring you down. History is full of examples of that, natural and man-made failures to adapt. Think of the Edsel automobile. Think of the dinosaur, the disposable flashlight battery, and perhaps someday the internal combustion engine. All these casualties of changing times and failure to adapt. What happens to people who experience these major changes? Medical challenges, displacement, loss of job, loss of partner. If they become stuck, how do they climb out of morass and triumph? Remember a short while ago, I asked you to consider your life story. A journalist and podcaster named Bruce Feiler wanted to investigate how people successfully coped with change. So he interviewed over 200 people, and he took down their life stories in something he called the Life Story Project. He found diverse stories of many people, but a common thread in those diverse tales. In his book, Life is the Transitions, Feiler concluded, quote, "I have come to understand that the world we live in is not a predictable path, but one filled with chaos and disorder." And as Feiler put it later on, the essence of chaos is self-organizing. It's what a river current does when it eddies around a boulder and then reforms. It's what a flock of birds does when it takes off from a tree and glides into formation. It's what a weather system does when it collides into a different system, merges, and then keeps moving across the country. Chaos is nature's creativity in the face of constant change. This chaos and disorder could occur at any life period, and episodes of tragedy and loss commonly occur at all ages of our lives. From the collective life stories, Feiler noted that life is a series of turns and twists, not just a gradual rise and fall. Through his interviews, he found that life for most people is not a linear progression, but a series of ups and downs. The people he interviewed had all experienced some sort of decisive fall and problem, and yet they came away with a better understanding of their world and experienced positive life transformation ultimately. The idea of passages, the famous book from the 1960s by Gail Shee, where we peak somewhere in our 30s and 40s and have a life crisis and it's downhill from there, that does not jive with reality. The fact is, it is ups and downs all along the way. And Feiler found that for most people, life is more not a linear movement like an expressway, but more like a country road with unexpected twists and turns. So Feiler called these life setbacks and conflicts, transitions that happen, disruptors. These are events which interrupt the flow of everyday life. He noted that the average adult can experience 36 disruptors in a lifetime. Some of these disruptors, such as death of a loved one or serious medical problem, divorce or a sudden job termination, can be truly permanent, disorienting, and destabilizing. They have potential to create serious chaos, and he calls them life quakes. According to Feiler, the average person goes through 3 to 5 massive life quakes in a lifetime. And I'm not even talking about living in California. So Feiler noted that life quakes are massive, messy, and often miserable. They come at inconvenient times that usually make them the most inconvenient. They aggregate, but they do something else, and this is the key. They initiate a period of self-reflection and personal reevaluation. They set in motion a series of reverberations that lead us to revisit and think about our very identity. They force us to ask what we don't ask ourselves enough in good times. What is it that life gives me meaning? And what and how does that situation influence the story of my life? As the motivational speaker William Ward once wrote, the pessimist, that's the glass is half empty guy, complains about the wind. The optimist expects the wind to change, and the realist adjusts the sails. The metaphor of navigation certainly applies to a variety of life contexts. Feiler concluded that there are strategies that these people used to overcome their problems. He called them tools for change, and I'd like to share these with you today. First one is accept it. Identify your emotions in response to a life change. You can't change it. It's real. So faced with a serious life quake, we might react with denial or resentment, but we have to move to acceptance. That's the first tool, and it's a significant step towards going forward in a life transition. In 12-step programs, they recite a mantra, quote, God give me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Attaining that mindset might be painful and difficult, but it is critical to recovery and rebirth and change. Second tool, ritualize the change and find some routine or ritual to acknowledge it. Feiler said that we often find some way to embrace a change with a personal ritual. Rituals restore a sense of agency, a belonging. We feel that the transition has helped us, and rituals help us draw closer to others. Some examples of that, such as in the Jewish religion, when someone dies, it is customary to observe Shiva, which is similar to a wake. It's a period of time when people, friends and relatives come and they socialize with the mourners. Socialization is critical. Some personal rituals that people include, according to Feiler, was included such as building an altar to the beloved who's lost, hosting a party or a celebration of life, changing a name, adopting a rescue pet, adopting a religious name, a massive house cleaning a la Marie Kondo or a garage sale, going on a diet, or even getting a tattoo. Focusing on ritual, not just the trauma that you've experienced, can be therapeutic. A third tool, give up your old mindset about how you used to live. SHIT happens, but Filer found that people who experienced a major life quake eventually shed their own mindset, and they gradually accepted cultivating new ideas or forming a new identity. Usually that's accompanied by some kind of a self-discovery or a journey. So he says, hit the road, embrace that travel, and enjoy the journey. But just don't think you'll never encounter a pothole. Fourth tool, try new things. Artistic expression thrives from a sense of chaos and loss. Creative activity is often born of pain and suffering. If you look at Van Gogh's paintings, you will see a perfect example of that. A musical genre that I love, and I used to play a lot, was the blues, which was born of pain and suffering of slavery. That was a kind of catharsis in music. So life transitions often bring out creative instincts that lift us in dark times. Another tool, share it. Share your situation and seek wisdom and support from others. I'm sure everybody's familiar with the Carole King song, You've Got a Friend, with typical lyric, when you're down and troubled and you need a helping hand, close your eyes and think of me, and soon I will be there to brighten even your darkest night. Sharing your story, attending a support group, that provides opportunities for constructive feedback. An old truism that we used to talk about in education is that, quote, none of us is as smart as all of us. At any age, there's wisdom in a group. Tap into it. Another tool, unveil your new self to others. Display your newfound talents or activities, or become active in a cause that you support. We hear about that all the time in our very UU services. And eventually, as you ponder your transition, you begin to form a coherent narrative about your life. And Bruce Filer put it well, the past no longer casts such a long shadow when the future comes into view. Launching a new project and gives you an opportunity to build a new life story. Compose a fresh life story is another tool, and celebrate your change. One of the most famous examples of that is Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. His family was annihilated during the Holocaust, and he was deeply depressed. And eventually he came around and realized it was his life's mission to help others. And he became a famous psychoanalyst. And that book is all about finding your purpose. So these are some of the tools that Filer has gathered from people who made that transition. There's a couple more that I'd like to share that worked for us, and I hope that some of you are doing these things already. This is not me telling you find something. This is a new discovery. One of the most important things that I think helps in transitions is planning ahead. Years ago, we went on a vacation to Greece, didn't make any bookings, ended up sleeping on our suitcases on the beach, hoping that we wouldn't be arrested by the Greek police. We wouldn't do that again. But imagine going to Costco or Trader Joe's without a shopping list. Oh yeah. Another tool, be flexible. Teachers talk about a teachable moment, when something happens in a lesson that ignites people and a spontaneous event, and the lesson goes off in a completely different direction. Because life has a way of throwing curveballs, and not everything that you plan happens. And we look at this as a kind of an opportunity to be a Gumby. You know Gumby, the flexible character from cartoon days in our youth? Well, we changed what Gumby is, really an acronym for geriatric undertakings to make benefits for yourself. And finally, another thing that works for us, and I hope it works for you at any level, comes from an old blues song that I used to love. Everybody ought to make a change sometime. The word vacation suggests that we must vacate ourselves from everyday life and pursue a change. This past summer, after really enjoying being home at last, we decided to take a road trip through New England, and we were able to reunite with friends that I hadn't seen in 38 years, people who put me on my path for music. It was an amazing experience. The poet Theodore Retke wrote in the poem The Waking, "I learn by going where I have to go." If you don't go anywhere, you don't learn. So now I'd like to close with a story about a second friend. I'll call her Jane. Jane lived the perfect suburban life of a Connecticut family and married to a lawyer with 3 children. Then one day her husband, who had a drug and alcohol dependency, was arrested and incarcerated for embezzlement. He had to get money for his nouveau riche lifestyle and his drug dependencies. Of course, divorce followed, and Jane had to raise 3 children alone. Finally, she married a wonderful man whom she loved dearly and loved her children. Then 1 year ago, this October, Jane lost her second husband, Patrick. She went out to walk their dog and came back to find Patrick dead in the shower. Jane enjoyed the support of friends and family and Patrick's own family. She grieved, but then she embarked on a series of critical changes. A memoir of her life story was accepted for publication, and she's looking forward to traveling and doing book talks in the spring. She continues to share time and love with her family and grandchildren. Drawing upon her past as a writing teacher, she continues to fly to Ireland as part of a mentor-sponsoring organization for Palestinian graduate students who are currently living in Ireland and attending Dublin's Trinity College. Jane continues to visit her family on both coasts. She regularly hikes, plays competitive tennis, and participates in charitable and political activities to combat illiteracy and to boost female education opportunities in third world nations. Just recently, however, Jane was tested for a potential life-threatening medical problem, but she told us on the phone, she told Marcia this, that she's resigned to continue her activities and take life one day at a time. Marcia and I really love and admire her courage, her determination to pursue a meaningful, unstuck life. So I'm going to conclude right now, and I thank you for listening. I hope I've given you some food for thought. I'm going to leave you with the words of Paul Simon. "Life is what you make of it. So beautiful or so what," he once wrote. So consider these characters, the Norma, Jane. Look into your soul and ask, what is my life story? Is it so beautiful or so what? You write your own story. Your choice is the next chapter. Thank you.